thanks to the developers for giving us this review copy. The game retails at $19.99 or £16.99. The story follows Otto and Anna, who are engaged. He's the one that kind of sounds a little bit like a skew-whiff Jon Snow.
Oh, Otto! Stop being a muppet! You know the mantra. Master the power that binds, with spark for greater good.
I combine their anima. But where is the greater good in making soldiers? We should be making stonemasons to repair our...
If he doesn't pass his big magic test, he can't marry her. She, on the other hand, is the master shaper. They created guardians that destroyed the evil that previously held the land, in the form of these wild golems. The evil was bound into a heart-shaped gem which, as I'm sure you can guess, soon becomes unstable. As Otto, you're introduced to the mechanics through the tutorial test you must undertake to become a shaper.
If you don't pass your trials, you can go and find yourself a mason's daughter.
Anna? I'm well prepared. I'll pass.
Zahr, I'm not quite sure how to say it, a shaper gone bad, rocks up and basically steals your misses.
Anna, I found you.
Stay alert, Otto. There may be more of them.
Sundering her into 3 parts, binding her to powerful crystals, which control monstrous golems. Otto's not exactly enthralled by this, clearly, and off he goes to collect these shards. Think of this bad guy as Ganon, and the story becomes all too familiar.
You vowed to serve and defend Spark.
I serve Spark. I'm saving her. Now, allow me to unbind your soul.
The execution is good here though, if not excellent at times, and the voice acting's decent, and so your true quest begins. Story was well delivered, and I really enjoyed the main character's voice. He wasn't a complete douche. You're kind of rooting for him. If you've played the game Kingdom Come Deliverance on the PC or the PS4 or whatever, you kind of understand his nature and the way that he is, and he's a really down-to-earth character, and one that I enjoyed playing as. It was a pleasant surprise to see that every character was voice acted, but not only this, they were voice acted quite well.
Oh, and don't die. I won't marry a dead man either.
I particularly enjoyed Doku, Master Doku, not that one. This one's even better. The main character himself, Otto. Not all of his writing was perfect, but just overall he had a nice manner about him, and it was always good to go back and see where he was going to go next on his adventure. The only really cliché voice acting came from the main villain.
We shall meet again in my unshapen paradise.
He did an okay job, but it was just a little bit too hammy for my liking. Overall though, the story was really well delivered and of a high quality. It gets 17 out of 20. So let's get on to the gameplay. When I said to Glenn that I was writing this review next, he said, "Oh, that's the one that looks a bit like Pikmin." Now, having not played Pikmin myself, I didn't really know what he was talking about, but I went online and had a little look, and to be fair, there are a lot of similarities here, so if you enjoyed those games, you may well enjoy this. Your health bar is shown as a blue bar at the bottom left. The HUD is pretty clean, but I would have liked a map just to know the general direction I had to go next. You have to collect green anima flames that fill up these orbs at the bottom right of your screen. These then allow you to summon initially only a few guardians, but later on up to 100 guardians can fight for you. You can use summoned guardians to make otherwise impossible fights manageable. This is made easier by a pretty intuitive control system that is actually surprisingly deep. It lets you send single or multiple guardians to do your bidding, all of which can be done on the fly with a little bit of fiddling, but not too much. You can get them to push objects and also recall them back to yourself, which restores the orbs you spent summoning them. Normal fights with golems are pretty standard fare, however boss fights require more planning as well as a resource management element. For example, later in the game when you get archer units, these can be placed into bushes or shrubbery, and when leveled up can't be hit as often from this position while also doing more damage. Have I got enough orbs to summon reinforcements if I need to? Do I keep some guardians with me and send half to attack and distract the boss while we wail on it from behind? All these questions will be asked of the player as they go through the game. Boss golems have a rage gauge located beneath their life bar. As this increases, their attacks become more devastating and do more damage. I like this mechanic as it incentivized quick decisive action. If a boss is going to do a devastating attack on your guardians, it's wise to quickly pull them from the battle to avoid huge losses. The gameplay harkens back to classic classics such as DIablo as well, and even the old Dungeon Keeper games. This was one of my favourites as a child. You aren't completely useless in combat, and your attacks feel quite weighty, and you only get stronger as you level up and acquire new abilities. You can use an orb to unleash the special abilities of your guardians, an early example of this being Battle Cry. This is an area of effect ability that you need to run into the fray, activate, and then run off. What it does for the guardians is it causes them to shield bash the enemy. Later, when you have the archers, it causes them to do a much more powerful shot. The caveat of this is that it uses 2 of those orbs that you collected. So if you're in a boss fight and there are only a specific number of orbs available to you, you're going to need to think carefully about what and when you use these abilities. The shield bash that you do can counter the rage mode of an enemy, which then leaves it in a stunned state, allowing you to do extra damage to it. I didn't expect this kind of strategy and was pleasantly surprised by it. Making that snap decision whether to run into the fray and counter the enemy attack or get them to pull out of the fight was fun and exciting. The Nintendo Switch has a distinct lack of real-time strategy games, and for me this really felt like the first of those. Now I know it isn't a pure strategy game, and I would have liked the ability to perhaps pause the gameplay to give me time to think, but actually being able to place your troops into cover, having certain troops follow you, and then place your archers around the outside happens quite easily on the Switch, and I was surprised by how well this worked on the small screen as well as on your TV. There are some light puzzle elements to the game, and these add a little bit of variety to the proceedings. The golems can become a little repetitive, but generally they're a cool design and they're fun to fight. The simple push this block onto this space to unlock the next area generally follows, but each area sees you granted a new ability to play around with, or a new summoning ability to use. So the strategy changes as the game develops, and I enjoyed this a lot. Add to that the fact that you can customize your character with upgrade points, and the whole experience is a lot more fleshed out than you might expect. The difficulty is challenging and it only gets more tricky as you go along, but you feel like you're given the tools to level up your character enough to tackle anything that comes your way. Overall, I really enjoyed the gameplay here, and it's something that hasn't been experienced on the Nintendo Switch yet. I give it 18 out of 20. We're just going to briefly look at controls. If you hit the Y button, this chains multiple attacks together. These are pretty weak but can be leveled up, as I mentioned. It feels a little bit like DIablo in this regard, which is certainly no negative. ZR is used to interact or talk to other characters.
You are late, Otto.
Sorry, Master Jakku. I was admiring the architecture. This place fascinates me.
I believe you are the oldest student to attempt to pass the trials since forever.
ZR and A is used to summon a guardian protector. These are armoured minions with sword and shield, bow and arrow, or later in the game, magic abilities to drain other characters. Pressing A sends a guardian where you want. Holding A sends all of the guardians in that category. If you're selected on the guardian or the archer, then only those will go. If you hold it down or keep pressing that combination of buttons, then you can send one after the other. You can send your archers, your guardians, etc. Then B brings them all back to you. You can lock onto a target and send your minions to attack while strafing to avoid damage. Or you can hold the trigger to lock on, run around an enemy and single tap that A button to place archers all around the outside. As you can see, there's this reticule that hovers around in front of your character, enabling you more precise control over where you place your minions. There were a few times where I accidentally pressed the right trigger rather than the left trigger. The right trigger is predominantly used for summoning, while the left trigger is used for control. Now that might just be me being a little bit special, but I found it happened more often than I would have liked. So for me, overall, the controls were functional, they worked well, but there are times where they can be a little frustrating, and for that reason I give controls 15 out of 20. As with gameplay, sound and music are of an excellent quality. The music was quite mysterious, but also quite charming. It had a tribal feel to it, which I enjoyed. The sounds of your combat as your minions hit the enemies, they're weighty and they work well.
Return to dust!
So as you work your way around the levels, the wind howling or the snow blowing or even your footsteps on the ground were all excellently reproduced. The music was of particular note. Just take a listen to this. In a game such as this, it's not easy to find the right balance between action and stillness, and I feel that they did an excellent job with the sound on this game. HD rumble is delivered okay, there's nothing particularly special, and I think they could have done a little bit more. Perhaps when you're summoning your minions, it's the build-up of rumble, or maybe the rage mode of the enemies could have been reflected in some way through the HD rumble. So overall, the game has excellent sound and music, with good voice acting, wonderful music and excellent atmospheric sound effects. There are the occasional odd sounds that don't really go with the action, but generally it's really well done here, and for that reason we give sound and music 16 out of 20. Graphics and presentation are overall a very high quality here. There seems to be some kind of dynamic resolution going on. It has a very similar look to games like Snake Pass, which were using the Unreal Engine. They look nice and everything, but there's a level of blurriness which is unavoidable when the power of the Switch isn't quite up to the task. Overall though, they've done a great job here, and the engine that they're using I think is the O engine, which works well and produces some lovely visuals. There are times when the frame rate can drop below the 30 desired, and this is slightly noticeable, but overall it runs at a solid 30 frames per second for the good majority of your gameplay time. I imagine later in the game when you do have 100 guardians, then things are likely to get a little bit more chuggy, but this remains to be seen. The graphics have a painterly quality to them, and it does look really impressive. That being said, this style isn't for everyone, and it does look a little bit muddy from time to time. The textures certainly aren't the crispest, but this follows a very similar aesthetic to things like The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, where textures weren't super crispy, but the artistic style made up for that. Overall, I think they look really nice, and for me, graphics get 17 out of 20. Not having completed the game yet, I can't really talk about value with any real credibility. The game has enough length that I've been playing for about 4 or 5 hours already, and really it doesn't feel like I'm anywhere into the story, so this is good. There is a bit of replayability in terms of the score system, which has you graded from S all the way down to D and E, and generally that adds some replayability to the main storyline in that each section is graded individually. What I can say about value is that for my playtime so far, I would happily pay the $19.99 asking price this game demands. The production values are of high quality, the combat is fun, and the overall storyline is well written and well voice acted. For me, this game deserves its Switchup score of 83%. If you are interested at all in the original Pikmin games, this is definitely going to be something you're going to want to check out. Also, people looking for some real-time strategy on the Switch, this one's going to be for you. If you're a fan of old-school DIablo games, then stop listening to me, go to the eShop and make the purchase. For the price asked here, this is borderline an essential eShop purchase. I really hope it goes physical in the future. Cheers guys, thanks again for all the new subscribers. It's gone absolutely mental now, like beyond what Glenn and I thought it would. We really appreciate it, and we will see you all on the next one. Switch up!